As the new host of the American Legion Junior Shooting Sports Competition and our National High School Oratorical Contest, Hillsdale College has become a trusted and valued friend of the American Legion. I'll tell you what, family, these programs deserved a place like this. And what a friend that we do have. I think we're even going to get greater recognition. And what an awesome partnership that we have began. And so we are truly honored to have with us today, who was obviously the key to making these life-changing events possible, and even a past Boy Stater. Is California in the house? That's where he did his Boy Stater stuff, all right? But also a vice president and dean of that esteemed institution, a professor of constitutional government. He received his bachelor's from Claremont McKenna College and a master's and PhD in government from the Claremont Graduate School. He has also taught at George Mason University, Catholic University, and Claremont McKenna. He is the best-selling author of We Still Hold These Truths, Rediscovering Our Principles, Reclaiming Our Future. Please welcome our friend, Professor Mathew Spalding.
Good morning, American Legion. As was mentioned, as a former senator from the state of California, Boys State, 1982, I am greatly honored to be with you. And I was especially pleased on behalf of Hillsdale College to welcome the American Legion oratorical and shooting competitions to Hillsdale College campus earlier this summer. We look forward to a long and very productive relationship. For those of you who are not familiar with Hillsdale College, we're a Christian liberal arts college in southern Michigan, founded by abolitionists in 1844. Grateful to God for the inestimable blessings resulting from civil and religious liberty, believing that the diffusion of learning is essential to the perpetuation of freedom in this country. Hillsdale was the first American college to prohibit in its charter any discrimination based on race, religion, or sex, and was the second college in the nation to grant liberal arts degrees to women. A higher percentage of Hillsdale students enlisted in the Union Army in the Civil War than any other college, save the military academies. Today, every one of our students is required to take a course on the United States Constitution. Like the American Legion, the history of Hillsdale College is deeply intertwined in the history of America. Like Hillsdale College, the American Legion knows the obligations of history, and what they create must never be forgotten and must never be neglected. This morning, I want to remind you of the importance of America's noble history, but also issue a challenge. In 1776, when it announced itself to the world, America was little more than a potential nation. 13 small colonies on a barren continent, thousands of miles from their ancestral homeland, surrounded by hostile powers. 2.5 centuries later, having won its independence from Great Britain, established a sovereign nation, completed its expansion and brought unprecedented prosperity to its citizens, survived a devastating civil war, abolished slavery and raised up the emancipated, triumphed in 2 world wars, fought on foreign soil in a decade-long struggle against worldwide communism. The United States has become the freest, wealthiest, and most powerful nation in the world. What accounts for this success? Every nation derives meaning and purpose from some underlying quality: an ethnic character, a common religion, a shared history. America has those, but it's also very different. We are unique among the nations of the world. America was founded at a particular time by a particular people on a particular idea. This nation justified its independence by asserting truths said to be self-evident, according to the laws of nature and nature's God. Working from the great principle of human equality, those who launched this experiment in popular government claimed a new basis of political legitimacy: the consent of the governed. Through a carefully written constitution, they created an enduring framework of limited government based on the rule of law. With this structure, they sought to establish religious liberty, provide for economic opportunity, secure national independence, and maintain a flourishing society of Republican self-government, all in the name of a simple but radical idea of human liberty. The founding of the United States was a revolution, but not in the sense of replacing one set of rulers with another or overthrowing the institutions of society. Our revolution was about the ideas upon which a nation was to be established. Permanent truths, said Lincoln, applicable to all men in all times, proclaimed that principle rather than arbitrary will would be the ultimate ground of government. What is truly revolutionary about America is that for the first time in human history, these universal ideas became the foundation of a particular system of government and its political culture. It was because of these principles, not despite them, that rather than ending in tyranny, the American Revolution culminated in a constitutional government that has long endured. To this day, so many years after the American Revolution, these principles, proclaimed in the Declaration of Independence, promulgated in the United States Constitution, still define us as a nation, and they still inspire us as a people. They're responsible for a prosperous and just nation unlike any in the world. The highest achievements of our tradition, serving not only as a powerful beacon to those throughout the world who strive for freedom, but a warning to tyrants and despots everywhere. It is because of these principles, not despite them, that America has achieved its greatness. But can a nation so conceived and dedicated continue to endure? When Ben Franklin departed the Constitutional Convention, he was famously asked, "What did you give us?" "A republic," he replied, "if you can keep it." Our nation's founders knew that the perpetuation of liberty would always depend on spirited citizens and patriotic statesmen actively engaged in the democratic task of governing themselves. Today, as we all know, most high school students and college students do not know the basic facts of American history. They consistently score poorly in virtually every measure of civic knowledge. But while there is much that we have forgotten, it is not merely a case of amnesia. In many circles, especially among the learned elites of our universities and law schools, those who teach the next generation, shape our popular culture, and set the terms of our political discourse, the self-evident truths upon which America depends have been supplanted by the passionately held belief that no such truths exist, and that history is less about facts and more about politics and political will. Over the past century, the federal government has lost much of its mooring and today acts with little regard for the limits placed on it by the Constitution, which many regard as obsolete. On both the left and the right, our political leaders are increasingly unsure of their way, speaking in inspiring generalities, all the while mired in small-minded politics and petty debate. As a nation, we are left divided about our own meaning, unable, perhaps unwilling, to defend our ideas, or our institutions, or maybe even ourselves. All of these problems, I would maintain, are rooted in a deep confusion about the meaning and status of America's core principles. In the midst of the many practical problems we face, unsustainable spending, increasing debt, loss of control of our border, national security in a dangerous world, the real crisis that tears at the American soul is not a lack of courage, but a lack of conviction. Do the principles that inspired the American founding have meaning and relevance in the 21st century? It's difficult to know what to do and how to do it if we're not sure who we are and what we believe. Free government means free citizens. Indeed, free government, if it wishes to remain free, requires free self-governing citizens. And free self-governing citizens, if they wish to remain free and self-governing, must be educated for citizenship. Civic education must convey a sense of enlightened patriotism that equips each generation with a knowledge of America's founding principles, but also a deep reverence for law and liberty, and a profound love of country. Make no mistake, patriotism cannot be imposed by schools or government edict. It must be embraced freely to be strong and be unsentimental, enough to coexist with criticism, opposition, and yes, imperfection. But patriotism is love, all the same. And without the deep foundation it supplies, our republic will perish. Students who are taught to understand America's exceptional principles and America's powerful history grow into strong citizens who respect the rule of law and protect the country they know and come to love. So, here's my challenge to you. In 1976, America's bicentennial, the American Legion actively encouraged, participated in, and led bicentennial celebration activities. Indeed, the American Legion and the American Legion Auxiliary, as I'm sure all of you know, donated the 8-ton replica of the Liberty Bell that traveled across the United States on the American Freedom Train in 1975 and 1976. I know it because I remember seeing it as a boy. In 2026, we together will mark the 250th anniversary of our country, a unique and once-in-a-generation opportunity to recall our nation to its heritage and remind our fellow citizens, and especially America's youth, of America's meaning and purpose. What are you going to do about it? The American Legion, in every post, in every state, in every region, should be front and center. Hillsdale College, among the many things we do and try to do more and more in our mission to educate the country, Hillsdale College offers free online courses at our website. Perhaps some of you have seen them. Go check them out. Educate yourself about your country. Then your family and your friends, your community, your fellow veterans, and then get involved in your schools, your state legislatures, your church, other civil society organizations. There's a National America 250 Commission, and there are many in many states. Are they in your local community? The critics of our country, the cynics and skeptics, the naysayers of patriotism and Americanism, dominate much of our culture, our media, and many of our educational institutions. They must not win the day. All of you once took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and you did so honorably. You also swore in that same oath to bear true faith and allegiance. And true allegiance and faith is a belief, an unwavering belief on your shoulders and in your heart about the cause of your country. You have not been relieved of that duty. And today, my friends, your country needs you. Let me close with a story. For those of you that know me and my work, I love history. In the spring of 1775, Boston was occupied by British troops, and its harbor was commanded by British warships. Local militias from the neighboring towns and villages had harassed and chased the king's men all the way back to the city after the battles of Lexington and Concord, and were being replaced by fresh volunteer units, constituting the beginnings of a ragtag rebel army. The Massachusetts Provincial Congress had relocated to safer quarters, but Joseph Warren, its new president and head of the Public Safety Committee, remained in Boston to lead the American opposition. Joseph Warren was a young medical doctor, the father of 4 small children, a widower engaged to remarry. He was the author of something called the Suffolk Resolves, you may have heard of. The resolutions passed by the Continental Congress calling for wartime preparation. He was also the one that sent a man named Paul Revere on a famous ride to warn the countryside of an imminent British attack. Perhaps you know some of this. Recall it to your mind. The Americans had moved their meager forces into the Charleston Peninsula, constructing hasty breastworks on the heights of Breed's Hill, overlooking Boston's from the north. The contemptuous British, contemptuous of the rabble in arms, they called them, planned a direct assault on their position. Although he had been elected a major general, Joseph Warren chose to fight as a volunteer militia. Twice the British attacked, twice the Americans holding fire until the advancing regiments were in close range. Perhaps you remember the famous line, "Don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes." The Americans held their line. The British were forced to fall back. Short of powder and ammunition, without reinforcement, the Americans were overwhelmed on the third assault. British soldiers swarming their redoubt, stabbing with their bayonets. Only later, days later, did they find Joseph Warren in a trench below the bodies of his fellow countrymen. 3 months before his death, Warren spoke these words, which I leave with you today. "Our streets are filled with armed men. Our harbor is crowded with ships of war. But these cannot intimidate us. Our liberty must be preserved. It is dearer than life." No longer could we reflect with generous pride on the heroic actions of our forefathers if we but for a moment entertain the thought of giving up our liberty. Our country is in danger, but not to be despaired of. Our enemies are numerous and powerful, but we have many friends determined to be free, and heaven and earth will aid the resolution. On you depend the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question on which rests the happiness and liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves. If history teaches us anything, my friends, it is that freedom is very difficult and usually short-lived. The founders knew that the success of their accomplishment could not be assured, and their experiment in free government would be tested again and again and again. They were right. As a nation, we have wandered for many years. The challenges today are great and they are grave. All we have is the immeasurable benefit, the providential gift of having inherited a great country built on the rock of human liberty with a firm confidence that man is capable of self-government. Our constitutional faith has not been erased from our consciousness. Our principles await rediscovery, not because they are kept in a forgotten museum or a dusty library, but because the truths of liberty are etched on the human soul. In times of peace and war, prosperity and poverty, political consensus and social unrest, each generation of American citizens is challenged to vindicate the sacred cause of liberty. This is our mission today. True faith and allegiance. Act worthy of yourselves. Thank you and God bless you.